Blat Gemara, it's Mitzvah Shabbos, Mevorchim Shabbos Chazak. We are up to that Pei Beis Amud Aleph, I believe 6 lines from the top. Quick recap of what's going on here. So we said in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon both say that androgynous, someone who's androgynous, both signs, male and female. According to the Mishnah, the way we read the Mishnah, it sounds like he's definitely considered a male halachically. And therefore, if he happens to be a kohen, not only can he eat truma on his own right, but if he marries a Yiddish woman, she can also eat truma because of the fact that she's considered a male. And that's the first part of the mission. Then we had Rabbi Yehuda said that a tumtum, once the tumtum was a skin growth over it, couldn't tell what he was, a male or female. And if it turned out to be that he was a male, he should not give chalitza because we treat him like a saris, like someone who is sterile. And then the Mishnah says, an androgynous can marry someone because he's considered a male, but he shouldn't be on the receiving end as treat him as a female because he's actually a male. And Rabbi Lezer came along and said that androgynous, if he has a relationship with a male, is considered like Mishkav Zachar because he's treated like a male. Then we have Nagman Shlakish Rabbi Yechid. Shlakish seems to learn that this is what we say that androgynous can give his wife the truma is only truma and not kachim because he learns that it's only a doubt as to whether he's androgynous or not. And he holds that truma today is only midrabanan, and therefore you can go ahead and give. You can feed a truma. Rabbi Yechid says no, androgynous is definitely a zachar, and therefore he can give a truma even if truma today is mahater. And then we had a discussion about a davar of a minion if it becomes bottle or not, and we brought a particular in the discussion of Yechid Shlakish. He brought up something, and that's what we're going to focus on. And that is, he says, if we had a brisa, and the brisa has the reisha and the sefer. The reisha of the brisa is that if you had a piece of chatas that was tummy, that got mixed up with 100 pieces of chatas that are Torah. We know the rule of bittul is that according to the Torah, everything is bottle b'roi. We look at the majority. But according to the Rabbanan, when it comes to a chatas, it has to be, and some other things as well, like truma, there has to be a total of 101, 100 versus the 1. So if you have chatas that is tummy, got mixed up with another chatas that is tahir, or lechem apanim. There the din is that we say that it becomes bottle, that is nullified. And Rabbi Yehuda says it does not become nullified. And then we said, but if it was a chatas that was tahir, got mixed up with chulin that was tahir, so everything is tahir, everyone agrees that does not get nullified. And the reason we gave was because since you can, it's not totally lost, you can sell it to kohenim because everything is tahir, just the chatas, you get less money for it, but for having less money doesn't give an excuse for us to rely on the laws of nullifying. Okay, and then we had, according to the Shlakish, that what do you call it? According to the Shlakish, how does he understand why does it become bottle at all? The Shlakish holds that anything that is sold from time to time, occasionally by a number like a piece of meat, should not become nullified. So how come it says over here that a chatas that tummy got mixed up with chatas that is Torah, it becomes nullified? So we explained according to the Shlakish is talking about a case which is nimucha. It dissolved, it disintegrated, and therefore it doesn't have any significance whatsoever, no chshivas, and that is why it becomes bottle. And why does Rabbi Yehuda disagree? Because Rabbi Yehuda says, he holds min b'minah, since it's the same kind, min b'minah live bottle. Min b'minah never becomes bottle. Okay, so now we're up to the Gemara here. The Gemara is going to try to understand, according to the Shlakish, about 7 lines on the top of the page. According to the Shlakish, Maishna Reisha, Maishna Sefer. Why does the Tanakama argue in the case where it's Tamei Chatas that got mixed up with Torah Chatas, and he says that it becomes nullified? And why is it when it becomes Torah Chatas and Chulin, it does not become nullified? What's the difference? Now, according to Rabbi Yechid, it's not a problem. Rabbi Yechid holds we're not talking about something that disintegrates, we're talking about normal pieces, and it's talking about something which occasionally you sell a double chashuv, and and nevertheless, because in the second case you can sell it to kohenim and make back most of your money, I don't want to rely on bittul, even though it's not really that chashuv and everything else. Nevertheless, since we're talking about chatas, which is a question of the Torah, and for a little bit of a loss, we're not going to rely on any rules. But Shlakish holds there's no significance here whatsoever. It's completely disintegrated. So because it's disintegrated, according to the Shlakish, what's the difference if it's a chatas tamei with chatas tahira or a chatas tahira with chulin tahira? What's the difference? Why in the sefer everyone agrees? 7 lines at the top and pay Beis Amud Aleph. I'll tell you the difference. The difference is we're not talking about the same case. We're talking about a different level of tumah. In the ratio, why we are lenient is we're talking about the karma chatas that became tamei only midrabanan, and in the sefer when we are strict and everyone can see that we should not rely on the rules of nullification, is a chatas that became tamei from the Torah. What do you mean the chat in the ratio became tamei drabanan? We're talking about that a sheretz, this dead rodent, touched water, mashkin, liquid. The liquid, the water becomes a rishon. Now this water then touched a keli. Mahatayra, a keli cannot become tamei from water, can only become tamei from an avhatuma. So it's the mahatayra is not tamei. The rabbanon will geyser on liquids that it makes the keli tamei because there are certain liquids like from a zav or a zava that have the status of an avatuma. So therefore, if mashkin touches the keli becomes a tamei. Then in the carbon, it's a rishon, and then you had a piece of meat of chatas inside there. So the entire tumah here is only with the rabbanon, and because of the rabbanon, and it completely disintegrated, we say, you know what? It's not chashuv, it is bottled. But the sefer is talking about that it became tummy from the Torah. So therefore, even though it disintegrated, we are going to be machmer over here and say, since we're talking about tahir kachim that mixed up with Torah chulin, and Yisrael cannot eat from it from the Torah. And so what? And we're going to apply the rule of min b'minay. In other words, this Tana holds, the way the Tana of this Brisa holds, that sometimes we'll agree with Rabbi Yehuda that min b'minay does not become nullified, and sometimes we don't. Where it's only midrabanan, we don't care about min b'minay, it's nothing. But where it's mat, and Rabbi Yehuda cares even drabanan. But where it's matayda, we'll agree that if it's the same min, it does not become bak. Says the Gemara. So let me ask a question. So what do you tell me? What happens if, let's say, in the safe as well, it became tamei, or let's say it became tamei directly from a sheretz? Forget the sefer. Let's say in the same case of the ratio, but instead of talking about it became tamei the rabbanon, it became tamei from the Torah. For example, the sheretz directly touched a piece of meat. So you're telling me that since it's tamei mahatayra, we're going to apply the rule of min b'min. Forget about the fact that it disintegrated, so it's not chashuv. Forget about chshivas. It's min b'min. It's all meat. And min b'min, where there's an issa in the Torah involved, is not bottled. So why introduce to us a new case about chatas that's Torah that mixed up with chulin? Continue in the same way about a chatas tamei that got mixed up with chatas Torah, and tell us that if it touched directly a sheretz, everyone agrees that it's not bottled because min b'min is not bottled. So the Gemara asks, Adatoni say, why introduce in this end of this brayso a new case? Like Tala, it does not become nullified. Nif like the listed bedidai. Continue talking about the very same case, which is all about a chatas, but one chatas was tired, the 100 pieces were tamei, and say as follows. When do we say that if you got it all mixed up together, that is nullified, and you can eat from it with tumah mashkin? If it became tamei through liquids, only tumah derabanan, we will not apply the rule of min b'minay. How about tumah sheretz? But if it became tamei a tumah sheretz, then loy. It became tamei tumah sheretz. It's awesome matera. We're going to apply the rule of min b'minay. It's not nullified. So you're right. We could have said that, but the same answer we learned yesterday. Tahira b'tahiris adufle. He felt it's the Brisa, the Tana of the Brisa felt it's a much greater, much more novel thing to say, where everything is tar, the chatas is tar, and the chulin is tar, and therefore logically you would say there's more reason, more grounds to say that it becomes nullified, and yet we're not going to nullify it, and that's why the Brisa mentioned that, because more of a chiddush. Further, another answer is come along Rashi. Sorry, come along. Rabba said, I'll give you another answer. You want to know why in the beginning, in the first case, Tanakama says it does become nullified, and the second case does not. Tell you why. Rabba says Reisha is an Isolav. The Reisha is talking about where the chatas itself was tummy. If the chatas itself was tummy, and a kohen eats from it, they did a lab, they didn't have air, but you don't get karas for it. The only time you get karas is if the chatas was tahir and the kohen was tummy. Then you get karas. So it's talking about a case where the chatas itself was tummy. So therefore, if you happen to eat it while you're not tummy, it's only a lab. Okay, only a lab. We're going to say that is bottle because min b'min is bottle. Reisha Isalav. But say for the second case where you have chatos that's toir, with chulin that's toir, everything is toir, and you're telling me that it's now chulin, everybody can eat from it, including somebody who's tummy. And if somebody tummy eats it, they're going to incur an isur of karas. Isur of karas, we're going to be very strict, and we're going to say that min bin minai, since it's all the same kind, it does not become nullified. Isur karas, says the Gemara have a problem with that. But Rabbi himself is the one who says elsewhere that if it's also from the Torah, then Leishna Isa Lab, the Leishna Isa Karas makes absolutely no difference whether there's Isa is a Lab or whether the Isa is an Isa of Karas. The laws apply at the same thing. So if it does not become nullified by an Isa of Karas, because Min bin Minay does not become nullified, neither would it become nullified by an Isa of a Lab. Kasha, it's a good question, and we do not have an answer for it. Comes along Rav Ashi says, Sefer, I'll give a better answer. He says, you know why in the Sefer everyone is concedes that we should be strict? The Sefer introduces the idea with Little Beya. It's a dover sheyesh lematir, which means something that is forbidden today, but tomorrow will be. We talked here about an egg that got on Yom Tov that's forbidden, got mixed up with 1,000 other eggs. You're not allowed to rely on the laws of nullification and say, let me eat it on Yom Tov. You have to wait till tomorrow, because dover sheyesh lematirin. Why eat it today using a kunz? Wait till tomorrow, and tomorrow, outright you can eat it. Dover sheyesh lematirin. Same thing here. Since you can sell it, in the second case, you have truma chatas that is tor with chulin that's tor. You can sell it to a kohen. True, you make a little bit of a loss, but you can sell it to a kohen. So there's a heter to it. There's a heter. Don't rely on the laws of bidding. That's what Rav Ashi says. The general rule is anything which has a heter, I feel about even if there's 1,000 times, multiple of 1,000 times, it does not become nullified. Says the Gemara. This one Rav Ashi says bedusahi. Either it's a mistake or berusa, it's narish or it's a lie. And why? Means today is forbidden, and that very same thing that today is forbidden is tomorrow permitted. The egg on Yom Tov is forbidden, but that same egg you can eat after Yom Tov. And like this, those who hold the chametz and Pesach is called davar sheyesh matilin, because the very same chametz you can eat in Pesach, you can eat mahatayra after Pesach. However, the Ginash Rav Ashi, here it's not a davar sheyesh matilin, and why not? A Yisrael can never eat from it. Not today, not tomorrow, the day after. A kohen can eat always from it. That's not a davar sheyesh. It's not this very thing that is usher now is mutter tomorrow. It's to those who is usher, it'll be usher forever, and to those that it's mutter, it'll be mutter forever. So it doesn't come under the realm of davar sheyesh matilin, and the law should be that it should be nullified. Therefore, your explanation isn't right. So you must say, "Leman, who are we talking about? Ilakai and Mishashari. It's always permitted, and Il Yisrael Ilamas always forbidden." Now it's interesting how many times in Shas we have that Rav Ashi says something. Rav Ashi is the one who, just think about this for a second, the humility that these Amoraim had. Rav Ashi was the editor of the Shas, and yet he allowed them to put into the Shas that what he said was either foolish or others, if the other Nusach Brusa, it's a lie, which is an amazing thing, because anybody else who's writing a book would make sure they delete or omit all those things, negative comments about themselves. So, quite amazing.
Were we holding?
Somebody please.
Yep.
We're not paid based on Aleph near the bottom, but someone tell them what exactly we're up to.
82A3 in the right-hand column.
82A3. Square.
Okay, so in the argument we had yesterday, Rabbi Yechon Shlakish, there were 2 points. One argument was regarding the Androgenus himself. Is he definitely a male or a suffix male? And the second argument is if Truma today is from, we know that in the times of Beis HaMikdash, Truma of wheat, of grains, Truma of wine, Truma of oil is from the Torah. And Truma of fruits is only Midrabanan. Reish Lakish said that after the post-Beis HaMikdash era, all Trumas today is Derabanan. And Rabbi Yechon said that post, the way we understood yesterday, that post-Beis HaMikdash, Truma on wheat and all that is still from the Torah. So Gemara is going to focus on that. You tell me that Rabbi Yechon holds that Truma today is from the Torah, but Tanya, we learned in Gemara Pesach, and we had an interesting case, and that is you have 2 boxes in front of you. One box had in it chulin, and one box had in it Truma, and then there were 2 other boxes right in front of them. Also, one box was truma, one box was chulin. They were next to each other, and you don't remember what's what. And one box fell into both boxes on the one table fell inside the other boxes on the other tables. The box on the right fell into the box on the right. The box on the left fell in the box on the left, and you don't know what's what. You can't remember which one was the truma, which is the chulin. What do we do in this case? So this Bryce is going to be very lenient, and I'm going to say we make an assumption that probably the truma fell into the truma and the chulin fell into the chulin. That's what the Bryce says. So Tanya, we learn two boxes. One box is made up of chulin, one box of truma. In front of them, you had two piles of let's say of whatever it was. One was chulin truma, they fell into each other. They are permitted. Why are they permitted? So the Bryce actually gives a reason why. There's a logic to it. Because I'm going to assume truma nafla, probably the truma fell into the truma, and chulin nafla, and the chulin fell into the chulin. Now, why are we so lenient? If truma is from the Torah, we know generally when there's a question of an issa of the Torah, we always take the stricter side. Why are we being lenient over here? So we're going to say that it's all, therefore the Gemara is going to conclude because truma is only the rabbanon. We're talking about today's times when truma is only the rabbanon, and if truma is rabbanon, therefore we generally have a rule that safek rabbanon lekula. And then we're going to go further. We're going to add another layer of a heter that's as follows. The Shlakish said, the Shlakish says, even though I believe that truma is only rabbanon, so safek rabbanon lekula, that's why we have a right to make this assumption. But I believe we need one more item to enable us to make that leniency, and that is provided there was more chulin than truma, which means it follows like a svek. First of all, there's a 50% chance that the truma fell into the truma, chulin fell into the chulin. And even if what happened was that the truma fell inside the pile of chulin, but if there was more chulin than truma, then mehatayra, it's batul beroiv. It's only midrabban you need 101 times. Mehatayra is batul beroiv. So therefore, you have eliminated any problems of any even association with something of the Torah. It's only a question of rabbanon, like it's a double derabbanon, and therefore we are lenient. So the Shlakish has a requirement of a double derabbanon. Rabbi Yechon comes along and says, Rabbi Yechon says, I don't need a majority truma. I don't need a double derabbanon. I assume that the chulin fell, the chulin truma, the chulin. Now, the only way that will make sense is if you hold that truma is midrabanan. Yet you just told us Rabbi Yechon hold that truma is from the Torah. So we have a problem. Says the Gemara. I understand the Shlakish because somebody holds with Rabbanan now be the point of it. Rabbi Shlakish holds tak is Rabbanan, but he holds you need a double Rabbanan to be able to be so lenient. But Ella Rabbi Yechon says that truma is from the Torah. Kasha doesn't make sense. If Rabbi Yechon explains our Mishnah that truma is from the Torah, but the only reason why the androgynous can give his wife to eat truma is because androgynous is 100% a male. There's no question about it. So then, how can Rabbi Yechon say over here we assume the truma fell into the truma chulin? We don't need a majority. Doesn't make sense. Says, well, you're right. Hamani rabbanani. There's an argument. Rabbi Yechon was explaining our Mishnah, the view of Rabbi Yossi, who said that androgynous can, when he gets married, he can feed his wife truma. So he explained androgynous is definitely a male according to Rabbi Yossi, and truma is from the Torah. However, but that's not everyone's agreement. Rabbanan disagree. They hold that truma is only midrabban. I was only explaining Rabbi Yossi. I was nothing to do. That's not my personal opinion. I was explaining Rabbi Yossi. Tanya, how do I know that Rabbi Yossi holds? Rabbi Yossi is saying that Rabbi Yossi is of the opinion that truma even today is Torah. The Tanya will learn Seder Olam. Seder Olam is like a history book that tells us a lot about the history of the world, and we had an Rashi a few times in Gemara Shabbos, in the story of Shavuos, actually, when the Torah was given to us. And Rabbi Yossi argues it was the seventh day, and in Seder Olam, Rabbi Yossi, calculates or works out all the days what happened. The Jews left Egypt, what day of the week, called Seder Olam. The author of that is Rabbi Yossi. And the time we learned Seder Olam, it says in the pasuk the following: it says, "Hashem will bring it to Israel, Asher Yarshu Avisecha, that your ancestors inherited," and then says the Yerushta, and you will inherit it. It sounds like it's the double inheritance. Your ancestors inherited, and you'll inherit it. It's a double inheritance. What's a double inheritance? Yerusha, the Shaina, Mishneh, there were two inheritances. The way Rashi learns, first was when Yeshua entered Israel, and the second time was when Ezra. after the 70-year Golus exile in Bavel, Ezra came back with 40-something people, and that was the second Yerusha. And if you remember the Gemara Megillah, we had a whole discussion whether the first Yerusha was just was forever or just for that time. So Rabbi Yossi says, the first Yerusha was temporary. Therefore, but when Ezra came in the second time, the second conquest, then it became holy. Israel became holy forevermore. And there's no reason, there's no reason to make it a third time. So Rabbi Yossi holds that Israel became a holy place, and therefore Truma is from the Torah. That's what Rabbi Yechon is saying. And who's the one who wrote, the author of Seder Olam is Rabbi Yossi. Reish Lakish obviously is going to say that the author of Seder Olam was not Rabbi Yossi, was somebody else. And that's that. Interesting traces here that he says that perhaps, even though we say that the Kedusha Shneya, Kitchel L'Shaita, Kitchel L'Shalom, maybe it's only the Shalayim, apropos to tonight. Maybe it's only the Shalayim and the Beis HaMikdash, but the rest of Israel is not. He makes a distinction between Truma and Meiser. And interesting. Anyway, so the Gemara continues. Okay, so we finished that. Now we'll go back to the new conversation that Rabbi Yechon holds that this Brisa holds Truma is a Rabbanon, and he says one Rabbanon is enough. And I'll assume the Truma fell to Truma Chul Chul. I don't care if there's a majority, as long as there's not a majority of Truma. Even the 50-50 is good enough. If there was more Truma than Chul, then obviously it's a problem. But if it's 50-50, it's good enough. Says the Gemara, is that so? The Savar Rabbi Yechon holds that if it's Rabban, I don't need a double Rabban. I don't need it to be a roiv of het. Let me ask you a question. But now we learn mikveh. We know that a mikveh sheyesh boy arboim son. So there's a measurement. There's a minimum amount of water that you have to have in a mikveh. You have to have 40 saw in the mikveh. Michuvanas. What about you have a mikveh? It's exactly 40 saw. Now you know that when it comes to a mikveh, you cannot have mayim she'uvin, water that's drawn, because mayim she'uvin, the drawn water, is with the rabbanon pasul for a mikveh. So if you have a mikveh that is exactly 40 saw, nosan saw v'notl saw. Now if you took out a saw of the water and you put in a saw of juice of mei peris, which is not kosher for a mikveh, the mikveh is possible. Because you had 39 saw, and the 40 that made it up was mei peris, juice, fruit juice, no good. What happened here was there was 40 saw in the mikveh, you added a saw of fruit juice. So it's still kosher mikveh, because one saw is bottled to 40 saw. And then you took out a saw of that mixture now, the water and the fruit juice and everything else. We say it's kosher, because it was bottled. So aboyim saw, mechavanas, nosan saw, you put in a saw of fruit juice. So yeah, now 41, and the mikveh is kosher. And then the nutl saw, you removed a saw. Kosher is kosher. Makes the following comment. You could continue doing this up to most of the water. And the more understands my love, then up to, you have to, when you take out the water, make sure that you leave in place a majority of water. In other words, what's Rabbi Yechon saying? In order to be lenient with this mikveh, you need a double the rabbanon. First of all, what's the problem here? The problem is like the mayim shuvin, drawing water. Number one. That's the Rabbanon. And number two, since you have a roiv of good water, you have a bit more than 20, let's say 21 saw of good water, so you need a roiv. So Rabbi Yechon clearly holds, even with the Rabbanon, you need a double roiv. Says no, you misunderstood. The Leinishko Rabbi didn't mean that you should leave behind majority. Don't take away the majority. 50-50 is good enough. I don't need the majority, but I can't have the other way around. If the majority of the water is made payers, then it's a problem. That's one answer. Another answer, the Gemara says, really, Rabbi Yechon holds you do need a roiv. You do need to double the Rabban. You do need a roiv. But you know why he was lenient in the case of Truma? Because you have a thing called Sha'ani Omer. Sha'ani Hocha. The Ika Lemeimar Sha'ani Omer. It's very easy to say, I am assuming that the Truma fell into the Truma. The chulin fell in the chulin, and there's no isser whatsoever. In the case of the mikveh, the fact is that there's fruit juice in there. So you can't say sha'ani omer. Therefore, the only way that is kosher is that you have roiv good water against whatever juice you put in. But in the case of the truma, there the brisa comes along and says sha'ani omer. That I say that the truma fell in the truma and this one truma. And if truma fell in the truma chul chul, there's no isser whatsoever. So what I need a roiv for? So the Gemara, and we learned in our Mishnah, and I get. Another part of the argument of Yechon Shlakish, Rabbi Yechon holds that androgynous is 100% male. And the Shlakish says, we're not 100% sure. It's a suffix, male or female. And therefore, the Shlakish says, Truma is Rabbanon. He can feed his wife Truma, but cannot give her the Chazay B'Shoy, cannot give her part of Kosher. So now the more a question tonight, we learned in the Mishnah that androgynous, no say that androgynous can go ahead and Chatchila marry. Now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, it makes sense. He's a male. But according to the Shlakish that says we're not 100% sure the male or female, how can the Mishnah say that Chatchila can go ahead and get married? How can you get married? Read it as if it says im nasa. Read it not that Chatchila the androgynous get married. Say b'di'evet, if the androgynous is married, it's all right. Says the Gemara. Sorry, place. But when I ask a question, what do you mean read it as if it says b'di'evet? But the Mishnah says noisei, and in Hebrew, grammatically, noisei means l'chatchila from the outset. Go ahead and get married. So you can't do the shlokish that you say it is a question whether this person is a male or female. How can you go ahead and get married? So the shlokish asks back, or those are the finished the time. Let me ask you a question. It says there that he can get married, and you're saying it means l'chatchila. Avaloi nisa, but he shouldn't be treated as if he's the woman in this relationship, and the man marries her, because if he's a male, you're having mishkav zachar. So what does loy nisa mean? Loy nisa means the chatchila you shouldn't marry, but the evidence all right. Or loy nisa means that even with the evidence you cannot marry. It means even with the evidence. Elamai nisa the evidence. So what does nisa mean? That even with the evidence they cannot live together because androgynous might be a male. So nisa not the evidence. Just like nisa means if it really happened, it's still no good. If the androgynous is treated as a female in a relationship, it's no good, even if it happened already. So the same thing when the Mishnah says that the androgynous can marry, it's only if he did, it's all right. Not that l'chatchila he can. Says the Gemara, loy no, who said? No, you say l'chatchila mashma. Avalani the other nam loy. It's two different parts of the Mishnah. There's two different stories there regarding marrying or on the receiving end. Marrying is l'chatchila. Even l'chatchila you shouldn't marry, because Rabbi Yochanan said, as the Mishnah translate the Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan said because he's 100% a male, and he shouldn't be treated like a female. Even with the evidence, he should not be treated female. So on the contrary, the Mishnah seems to be saying that the androgynous is 100% a male, not like the Shlakish. Says the Gemara. Let me ask a question. When we come to say for the very last line of this Mishnah, it says Rabbi Lezer came along and said that androgynous chayovin olav skila kezachar. He comes along and sounds like it's giving us a new opinion that androgynous is treated like a male, and if he has a relationship with another male, it's like you have a relationship with another male, a mishkav zachar, and you chayiv skila. Obviously, he's adding or he's arguing. The klal Tanakama is that either the first Tana sfukim misapkule, that it seems the first Tana doesn't agree with that. The first Tana says, "I'm not sure if it's a male or female." Doesn't this prove that Shlakish is right? You, Rabbi Yochanan, say that androgynous is 100% a male. So of course, the Tanakama would hold if he marries a male, it's like mishkav zachar. So what's Rabbi Lezer adding? Rabbi Lezer says that if he marries a male, it's like a mishkav zachar. They're saying the same thing. Obviously, the Shlakish is right. So how's Rabbi Yochanan going to learn the Mishnah? Says the Gemara, no. I hold Rabbi Yochanan said that everyone agrees that the androgynous is a male. So what's the difference? An androgynous has both sets of genitalia. It has the male and the female. So what happens? An androgynous is 100% a male. But what happens? Your relationship with androgynous is you're the male, but your relationship is with the female part of androgynous, not with the male part of androgynous, but with the female part of androgynous. Is that considered as if you're because your relationship is with the female part? It's not an iser or not. And that's the argument Tanakama and Rabbi Lezer. The Tanakama holds chayovin olav skila mishnei mekaymis. The Tanakama holds the androgynous is 100% male. Everything about him is a male. Therefore, if a male has a relationship with androgynous, I don't care where it's also mahatera, it's mishka zachar. Rabbi Lezer comes along and says only if you treat him like a zachar, only if you treat him like a male. Only then are you over the issa. But if you're having a relationship with the female side of androgynous, it is not awesome material. Omar Rav says Rav as inclusion lesser lemasnise in mikame de braisa. Rav says that even though we have this mission over here, and Rabbi Yasi says that androgynous can feed his wife, Truman is 100% a male. Ignore it because we have a braisa where Rabbi Yasi says something else. What's the story? The Tanya Rabbi Yasi says androgynous berye bifnei atzmahu. Androgynous is treated like a separate gender altogether. Big machlekes are showing him how do we actually understand it. Normally we say Beria means it's a different gender, a different species altogether, which is how Rashi learns and many Rishonim learn. So what Tosfos learns, Beria with means he's definitely not a male, not a female. He's sort of both. He's sort of a suffix. It doesn't fall under either gender, or you have the chumras of both genders. Not that he's the third gender. There's no such thing as a third gender, and no such thing as other. There's a Beria means that it will always remain a suffix, a male, a suffix, a female, and therefore you take on all the chumras. If it's a male, so and so, female, anywhere there's a chumra, you take on the chumra. That's what Beria is, and therefore the Braisa we see, Rabbi Yossi holds suffix male or female, and our Mishnah it says clearly that he is a male. Yeah.
Are we talking obviously androgynous in these contexts? Biological deformity, call it. What happens when we're talking about somebody today in today's world that's transitioning from one gender to another?
I actually gave a share of this a number of years ago. I think he was Rachi. Maybe not. I can't remember. Shvuz by night. Bottom line is, all the poskim say, if you go ahead and you deliberately change your sex, doesn't in any way change your role in Yiddishkeit as far as mitzvahs are. Male comes to female, you still have to put on film, and everything else you're a male.
But are you over on Mishkav Zachar? Are you over on Mishkav Zachar? I mean, did they fall under the category of being an?
I'm so saying they don't recognize. Everyone does not recognize whatever you did. Just because you decided that you're a female, even if you do all these operations, you were born a male. That's what you are. If you're born a female, that's who you are. And we found, I think it's an Even Ezra in the beginning of. To remember now where it is. In the beginning of it's an Even Ezra. It talks about it actually in Chumash. The beginning of one of the parshas was a Kedoshim. I can't remember one of the parshas. It talks about Tazria. Tazria. Even Ezra. Bottom line is, all the poskim say no.
But the Metzias is the act.
Metzias doesn't matter.
No, but but surely there's got to be discussion about what occurs during intimacy, and we're clear. The Torah is quite clear on what on a male and male relationship.
He's not called. The Torah does not recognize that this person is in the cave because he decided to make himself in the cave.
What about other ways? What about the woman who wants to make herself a man?
Same thing. Same thing. The shaila that came up going back 20 years ago. The shaila came up is that this female became a male, came to shul and wanted to be counted as a minion. That's where the shaila came up, and all the Rabbanim Israel got involved in this thing. It's going back 20 years ago. I mean, transgender is not something new. It happened then as well.
Okay, but they just take that a little bit further. If a male male's transition and comes to shul, in beautiful makeup and a lovely dress and everything, and
the problem is not minion. The problem is other things, tznius and all that, but nothing to do with.
If it's a male, there can't be the question of tznius.
Why not? Tznius is you are affecting others that they cannot focus on the davening. There's different criteria for that.
So she's not beautifully dressed up, but comes as a female anyway. Okay.
Yeah, it's different criteria. But yeah, so the bottom line is androgynous is, we see Rabbi Yossi himself change his mind. It's not 100% a male. It's either a separate gender altogether, or it's something male or female. And the Chachamim don't know him Zachar Mikeva. Says the Gemara. So what happened? You have a Mishnah that says clearly is a male. You have a Brisa that says we're not sure, and you are going to dismiss the Mishnah because of a Brisa. There's no precedent for that. Says on the contrary, let's dismiss the Brisa because of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, I'll tell you how I know the Brisa is actually much more reliable. In the Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi is together with Rabbi Shimon and they talk together. In the Brisa, it's only Rabbi Yossi. So it's clear Rabbi Shimon still maintains his opinion like the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi initially agreed with Rabbi Shimon, and then later on in life, Rabbi Yossi changed his mind. He left behind his colleague. Shema min al-Hadabe is a proof that Rabbi Yossi changed his mind. Initially, he thought androgynous was a male, and now he just said, I'm not sure what it is. Shmuel says, lesser lebraisa mekame mastis. Shmuel says all the way around. Dismiss the Braisa, we follow the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi agrees 100% on androgynous. So you want to add your Rabbi, what you just answered, we can use that now as a question. Lesser mastis mekame Braisa. Dismiss the Mishnah because you have a Braisa. The Shemin the Shmuel, we heard Shmuel say elsewhere, the Chayish Lichidah. Shmuel said elsewhere that the halach is like a single view, like Rabbi Yehuda over there, and so on and so forth. He respects even a lone opinion. So this brisa should be respected as well. Says the Gemara, Hani Midi, when does he say you respect the lone opinion? When it's not contradictory to a Mishnah. The only way you can confirm the brisa is by ignoring the Mishnah, then loy chayish. Then we do not follow it at all. And then tomorrow the Gemara will continue about the Sandragonus and Rabbi Yasi. Okay.